Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday evening to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there and certainly had yourselves a fantastic day. And I hope you all are having a great start to your weekend. I want to jump on here and kickstart your weekend with an update on Major Hurricane Lee. This is still a Category 4 hurricane as of right now. There's a chance that may change, and I'll talk about why here in a second. But we're going to give you the latest and greatest information from the National Hurricane Center or what they're saying on Lee. We'll talk about what Lee looks like right now, which is obviously right on your screen right here in front of you, but we'll get more detailed on it, obviously. And we'll give you an update on the latest information from the hurricane hunters that we got earlier this afternoon. We'll compare some model guidance, and then we'll talk about the steering currents, which I think is very important. We'll kind of geek out on you as far as what could potentially steer Lee in the long term, basically in the long term future of Lee, which will be well into next week. We're going to be talking about Lee for a while, guys, probably clear through mid-September. But you got the ridge of high pressure, you got low pressure. Both of these affect this hurricane and all tropical systems in some sort of way. So, a lot of people are just quick to say, I got a gut feeling this is going to hit the eastern U.S., or, this person told me it's going to hit my state, or this is going out to sea. And everybody speaks in such high confidence. But, you can have high confidence for sure. I got some pretty high confidence on what I think it's going to do. And I'll talk about that here a little bit deeper in this video. But I think it is very important for the general audience and people even that don't have a passion and interest in weather to actually understand how it works. And that's why I try to do for you folks. I try to explain it in a way where you guys can understand. So that's what we'll do here. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below so I can do that. Let's get rolling. So this is obviously Lee right here. Lee is struggling. I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I'm not going to overhype this. Lee looks totally different than what it looked like 24 hours ago when we made a video on this. Lee 24 hours ago had a cleared out eye. It was so cleared out that it was actually a dry eye. I mean, you could see it on water vapor loop, right? If you don't remember what I'm talking about, go back and check it out. It was very impressive. Lee now looks like a pretty sloppy major hurricane, I would say. In fact, if you told me this was a Category 3 hurricane, I would say, yeah, that sounds about right. Now, we got new information that we're going to get from the hurricane hunters as far as what's actually happening under the hood of Lee right now. But I can tell you, based off what we see right here, and what we're about to show you on water vapor loop, Lee is struggling. And remember this morning I said it was because of an eye wall replacement cycle potentially. Well, that wasn't the case actually. So I do apologize for the miscommunication there. It's actually been because of some under-modeled, poorly modeled mid-level shear out the west that's been affecting the storm. So if you look at this, and by the way, this is still a powerful hurricane. You see the areas in whites and the pink showing up? That indicates very high cloud tops, which still indicates some very robust updrafts. And this thing is still kicking strong. It's not as vertically stacked. It's tilted a bit. And you can see this by basically how all the worst conditions are kind of on the southern and western side of the system. It's getting hit by this westerly shear, which is ultimately affecting the western side of the storm. So if you notice, there's a stout gradient between, basically there's a stout gradient between nothing going on and a ton going on right into here. And then the eye of the hurricane's right into here, right? But if you look on the eastern side of the storm, you got a pretty substantial kind of backdrop of convection well away from the eye. And you can actually see the shear and how it's affecting these little plumes of showers and storms right into here well west of Lee. And look how they try to form, then they get basically evaporated by this shear, and then they try to reform again, but they just can't sustain themselves. So we know that shear, which is basically a changing of direction with height, tropical systems do not like shear. Okay, it makes them basically tilted and loses that vertical stack that these systems want. What they want, their low-level circulation and that mid-level circulation on top of that low-level circulation. So Lee is struggling, and you can see it here. There's no cleared-out eye. It looks like a pretty powerful hurricane, and he is. And I'll say that again, but you can see how right here in this region right here, how this shear is affecting this hurricane. You see how it gets this tight gradient of just nothing to a lot. that really indicates how most of the action is being shunted off, like I said, to the eastern side of the storm. Still a pretty expansive outflow ongoing, so the upper wind pattern is still pretty supportive. It's just that about 15, 20 knots of mid-level shear, maybe a tick stronger, maybe a tick lighter by the time some of you folks watch this, that's really affecting the storm. And this is why Lee ultimately did not verify in that high-end scenario that the National Hurricane Center dropped earlier, which was 180 miles per hour this morning. So Lee, as of right now, let's see if there's new information, and there's not. Lee right now is a 942 millibar hurricane central pressure. It's 150 miles per hour. But I would argue that on the next update from 8 p.m. or 11 p.m., this will probably be a little bit weaker. I would venture to say they might drop it to 140, 145, based off what we see on satellite or what Lee looks like. So I might be wrong. It might be totally wrong. But this is moving west-northwest at about 13 miles per hour. Like I said, 150 mile per hour storm. Margot is out here. She developed yesterday. There's been a lot of crazy stuff on like TikTok saying how these are going to merge into some sort of superstorm. Please be careful what you believe out there. There's a lot of crazy misinformation about Lee flying around. People are basically taking advantage of the fear and anxiety that people have over, deadly storm systems like hurricanes and tornado outbreaks. And people are going to do whatever they can to make a quick buck. And, obviously this system is no different. So it's really unfortunate, but there's not a whole lot you can do to stop it. It's just going to happen. All I'm going to do is just try to give you guys the facts and the real information and do our part here at Mitch West Weather. So latest information as far as the cone of uncertainty from the National Hurricane Center from the 5 p.m. update. This is the latest cone where it says M. That means that it's a major hurricane, category 3 or higher. And between now and next Wednesday, not affecting any landmass. So that's good news. Another way you can look at this, and this basically will show us the peak intensity on each time frame, says it'll be 140 mile per hour category 4 hurricane tomorrow afternoon. By the time we get into Monday afternoon, it might re-strengthen. And in fact, I think there will be an opportunity for Lee to get back to category 5 status as it gets to this portion of the Atlantic right in here, well north of Puerto Rico. I think that I think it might undergo or enter one of its best environmental kind of areas, if that makes any sense, for it to explode back into a category 5 hurricane. So we'll see if that happens. But like I said, the cone doesn't extend all the way over here. Okay, North Carolina ain't in the cone. Southern New England ain't in the cone. Nova Scotia is not in the cone. Eventually, okay, some of these areas up here might be in the cone, but as of now, they are not. Okay, so the latest information that we got almost several hours ago at this point now from the hurricane hunters found that central pressure at 942, which is what it is, and registered winds that supported about 150 miles per hour. So obviously you look into here, these are winds well over that 113 knot frame, basically between 113 and 137 knots. I think that is what this reading is. Yep, 113, 137 knots. Remember, we were seeing this shade of pink in last night's video. It's not the case. So this was a sub 930 millibar low pressure hurricane last night. It's definitely about 10 to 15 millibars higher now, about 15 to 20 millibars higher. So let's take a look at the European. It's initializing terribly. Okay, but we're going to look at the European and the GFS just for tracking it. Okay, where did these two models show it's going to go in the medium to long term? So let's take a look at the European and then we'll take a look at the GFS. Both models pretty much agree in the long term. This is going to enter just north of the Leeward Islands, well north enough to where it's not impacting them. The Euro shows that opportunity of it re-strengthening. You see how this number begins to drop? And in fact, it drops it all the way to a sub 920 category 5 hurricane sometime Tuesday night into next Wednesday morning, the 12th into the 13th of September. So there's going to be an opportunity, I think, for this to re-strengthen right into here. It might get back to that category 5 status. So this is going to be the time frame where I think social media is going to go wild, because they're going to say, this system, why is it still going west? And, why is it switched from west-northwest to west? And it looks like it's heading right towards, the southeast coastline of the Gulf of Mexico. It's supposed to do that. And I'm going to talk about why when we get to the steering current. So I'm going to tell you right at the dot, when this gets to a point where it's moving due west, Do not freak out because we're expecting this. Okay, so this kind of stalls out, moves very slow, then it sniffs out that weakness, and I think sometime late Wednesday night into Thursday morning, this begins to pick up speed and head north. We take it all the way to Friday morning, and this is showing to be a 948 millibar major hurricane still sneaking up on the west side of Bermuda, far enough away where there's no catastrophic impacts or anything like that. We take it all the way to Saturday morning. This gets dangerously close to Bermuda, but it looks like it misses it enough where there's no major impacts. That could change. Okay, let's go on and take it to Saturday morning, and this is where it's saying this hurricane's going to be at, and then all eyes are on like Maine and Nova Scotia. I think if someone says, hey Mitch, you tell me where this hurricane's going to go, I'm going to do something bad to you, you have to give me one place, I'm going to say Nova Scotia. And I hate that for my folks in Nova Scotia. I know I got a few people that tune in from that area. But if I had to pick one place right now, it would be Nova Scotia. So European, we get into Sunday morning, and here it comes, coming up on Nova Scotia, even bringing impacts to Maine, and makes landfall into southeast Canada as a pretty substantial hurricane, guys. A 955 millibar storm. Now, this would probably lose some of its tropical characteristics, but the wind field on this would expand. And I'm about to say the S name, like Sandy, but I'm not saying this is going to be a Sandy. But you know how when Sandy lost its tropical characteristics, its wind field became massive. And that's what they do. Now, that means typically the core weakens, but the wind field expands. Okay, so this makes landfall sometime late next weekend. Next weekend, guys, late next weekend. Take a look at the GFS, and we are way too far ahead. And here it is. We'll go on and start it right here. Sunday morning, this is getting north of the Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico, and this actually kind of maintains strength. Then Wednesday morning feels that weakness. Thursday morning heads due north. Notice it's not plowing into the southeast coastline, and I can tell you the GFS is much quicker initially with this. We'll actually get on up here, and then Friday morning, this is heading right towards Canada, and then look how wide this thing gets. I mean, it's expanding all the way to the western side, the eastern side of Nova Scotia, all the way to Boston. This thing's huge. All right, that's something we got to watch. It really is. All right, but this takes it into like Nova Scotia like a day and a half earlier. Okay, but just like the European, the GFS takes it right into Nova Scotia. All right, but you got some impact showing up in Maine and New England. Okay, so that's the run of the GFS. What about the H-half model? Well, this is as far out as the H-half model goes, and it has it sitting right here in the southwest western Atlantic, well north of Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, well south of Bermuda. Okay, this thing was moving west, but look how it gradually turns north. Okay, so that's good news for our folks in the southeast. It's looking like it's feeling that too. I was sitting there looking at the hurricane models there for a while, and I was wondering, okay, when is this going to turn north? And finally, it's starting to show when it is. But we look at the ensemble, and I'm sorry I stayed such a short time on this. The H-half model, which has been doing pretty decent with this, still has this as almost a Category 5, if not a Category 5 hurricane, right here in this area I just mentioned. So it just really goes to show you guys, we're going to be talking about a high-end Category Lee for some time. I mean, to the point where we're going to get tired of hearing the name Lee. European Ensemble Guidance. Okay, this makes up 51 members of the EPS run. Okay, combines it into one run. Notice how almost all guidance takes a abrupt turn north. Now, how far west does it get before it makes that turn? Does it make it pretty early on? That we're not 100% sure. You got Bermuda right into here, which is being, you see some members going right into Bermuda. We need to watch that. But what I'm concerned about is once you get up here, you got a lot of members that go right into southeast Canada, Nova Scotia. And if you were to keep this moving a little bit further north, there's some moving to Newfoundland. All right, but you got some members going into Maine, but you have no members, guys, going into the Mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, and certainly not Florida. Okay, so regardless of what, and I'll say this, I've been seeing a lot of comments on all social media platforms about a gut feeling. I got a gut feeling it's going to do this. I got a gut feeling it's going to do that. I got an uneasy feeling. I get gut feelings too. I'm human just like y'all. Okay. But the only thing we can do is really stick to what we know. And I'm about to show you what we know as far as the steering currents. And we're pretty confident that this is going to make a turn north. It's just, is it going to make a turn north in time? So, you know, a lot of people are saying I'm getting Hugo feelings from this. I can tell you I'm not, personally. And I know you're going to say, Mitch, you weren't even born with Hurricane Hugo. And I wasn't. I was born in 91. But I'm just not getting that. There was a totally different atmospheric players out here with Hugo than what there is with Lee. All right, and we'll talk about that right now. Starting right now, we have this subtropical ridge that's on top of Lee, which is right here. And this, in the orange colors you see on this screen, this is high pressure. In the blue, that's low pressure, which is definitely some upper troughing showing up over the southeast right now. But this blue blob, that is Lee. All right, what you notice here is you got ridging on top of this. You got ridging basically getting pushed over Lee. So you keep this going. All right, you still got the orange, this ridge of high pressure on it. This is forcing Lee to make its way east to west. So you got to wonder, well, when is this ridge going to leave? You know, you get kind of concerned briefly because you're thinking, well, this ridge, if this stays over this storm, it's going to force this to go due west and eventually affect the mainland somewhere, okay? But what you notice is this ridge might briefly actually kind of flex right on Lee, which forces this to more so actually just go east to west. Okay, but this is going to affect this storm. And we know that the flow around a ridge of high pressure goes like this. And let's back it up a little bit to show an example of this. Okay, we know the flow goes like this around high pressure, okay? It goes like this. Now, I know you see this area in orange, but this is very weak high pressure. Basically, Lee, with being a stronger system, is going to plow right up against that. No problem at all. Now, if you see this darker orange, if this was building back southwest on top of Lee, then we would have an issue with Lee basically continuing that western path, maybe through the Bahamas, maybe eventually into Cuba, Florida, the southeast. But that's not the case. And if you see right here, we'll take all this off your screen and we'll keep this going here. If you see right here, the area in orange, watch it disappear. Okay, that weakness right here, there it goes. It begins to move back north, and here's a trough, right? The weakness shows up in the white, where we basically lose the influence of that ridging of high pressure. So therefore, Lee immediately begins to feel this weakness that's being created basically by this ridge that's basically moving on out the way, and then this trough that's coming in, it's probably weakening at the same time. And here it comes. It begins to move north, due north immediately. Because what we know about tropical systems is strong ones want to gain latitude. They fight to move north with everything they got. So as soon as this ridge backs off that you see right here, this immediately says, all right, I'm heading north. All right, and nothing's going to stop me. All right, so you move a little bit further and a more broader look at this. It's another great way to look at this, okay? This ridge kind of beaten down on Lee. This is actually probably maybe an aiding factor on the little bit of shear that's going on with it too. But two things going on here. Weakness opens up, and you got this huge blue area right here over the eastern U.S., which, by the way, will deliver our cool down next week. Okay? This is going to work with this ridge to create an avenue. It's just, where does that avenue set up? Here comes that weakness. Lee begins to move north. Okay? But this ridge begins to re-strengthen up here in the North Atlantic. How much does this push down on Lee? At this point, okay, if we back it up a little bit, we got a flow around this ridge that's kind of going like this, right? That might be some really crappy arrows. I do apologize. Flow going around like that, and then you got a flow that's going like this around this trough that's going like that. So you would think, oh no, this is heading right in between and is about to plow right into Boston or Cape Cod. Not the case. Okay, this is Friday morning. All right, this still has to go. Now, if you were to freeze both this low pressure where it's at right now and the high pressure where it's at, okay, then yes, I mean, obviously it would go right into Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts. But that's not the case. These are always moving factors out here, okay? Everything's moving. The atmosphere is always moving. So you keep this going. Watch how this ridge begins to shift a little bit further out into the North Atlantic. Okay, and another thing to notice is this trough weakened, so it's not really being influenced as much by it, even though this upper trough over here, which is weakened, is still helping to aid to push this probably a little bit further out. So it's a big question on what's going to happen. At this point, this ridge is still anchored over the North Atlantic. So this is still trying to really push this way. At the same time, you probably got some steering currents that are pushing it this way because of this trough. Okay, so you kind of have competing steering currents that's basically sandwiching Lee and forcing it to go right basically in between it. So it's basically at the mercy of this high pressure and this. But this is going to try to work against this as much as possible. But in this case, it ends up plowing right into Nova Scotia because this ridge does not move out the way fast enough. Okay, now if we can get this high, okay, to move on out the way faster, this can take an escape route. And if we can get all this orange to disappear, then this is going to head on out and feel the weakness. Okay, at the same time, you can have a stronger trough over this region that could kick this out. All right, we could have a weaker trough. Okay, if we had a much weaker trough then and kept this high pressure here, then it would feel the steering currents off this ridge of high pressure a little bit more, forcing this to maybe move a little bit further west. I know that's a little bit confusing, but just remember, okay? Remember that the flow around high pressure goes like this, okay? Just like that. Of course, it's probably going to go out like that because you still got high pressure way over here. The flow around low pressure, just like with our tropical system, goes like this, okay? So it's the same thing with this low pressure here. You got flow that's going like this, trying to kick this out, but at the same time, you got steering currents around this ridge that's pushing, trying to push Lee back. Okay, and a great example of this, guys, is this is Margot right here, right? This is Margot trying to get into the mix, trying to have some fun with everything. All right, watch how Margot tries to creep back west. See how it's kind of moving west a little bit, especially right in here. There's a little bit of a tick west. All right, it's not much, but it's there. So it's a great example of that. I hope that makes sense. I hope I explained it in a way where you guys can understand. Let's give you some good news here. The 6 to 10 day temperature outlook looks amazing, guys. This is September 14th through the 18th. The chances for below average temperatures are 60 to 70% across areas of the Mid-South, the Ohio Valley, and the Southeast. We have a fall air mass on the way next week. Pumpkin spice latte all day long. And it's just, I love this time of the year when you start to get the cold fronts. And here it is. We're going to get one next week. I'm really excited about it. And a great way to see this is dew points. These are not temperatures. These are dew points. Check out these dew points that crash in. This is next Wednesday. This is next Thursday morning. Look at these dew points replacing all this tropical air. Meanwhile, you got Lee right here. And ultimately, this cold front that brings this dry air is what really tries to kick out Lee. We'll see how much it actually does with this, like I said, this ridge of high pressure up here in Canada. But look at these dew points across the eastern U.S. These will cause temperatures to probably get well into the 50s for lows, maybe even some 40s across the Mississippi Valley and the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes region. But this is a beautiful air mass showing up midway to late next week into next weekend, and then it might be reinforced. All right, so we got this to look forward to, guys, but we got a lot to figure out. That's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a great night.